I'm going to read out loud another one of the exercises in the series of practical exercises for inner harmony. This one is called Start Your Day Right. I will now read the exercise entitled Start Your Day Right. Start your day in an upward direction, and the rest of the day will follow the uphill path. Here are 3 methods. A. When you begin to awaken, do not let yourself fall back into another minute or 2 of sleep. Do the opposite. Stay awake and deliberately force yourself out of bed. This will give you a mild but healthy jolt. B. As you slide out of bed, be conscious of the exact moment when your foot touches the floor. Feel the weight of your foot against the rug. This is an interesting experience that will help keep you conscious of other small daily events. C. As you walk away from the bed, notice everything possible about yourself. Notice that you might feel drowsy or depressed or uncertain. Then actually shake your head as an act of shaking the sleepiness from your life. These 3 methods make your actions conscious, and conscious action is true power. If it seems difficult to work against your usual habits, remember this spiritual law. Do things the easy way and you perpetuate the hard life. But do things the hard way and you finally come to the easy life. And that's the end of the exercise entitled Start Your Day Right. This world that you live in is not governed by human beings at all. This globe is not run by human personalities. It is not run by events at all. Already this may be something of a surprise to you, because our minds are slanted so much toward believing that people, men, women, great men, ungreat men, that they control the events of the world. Nothing could be more distant from the truth. This world that you live in, that you existed in today, is controlled by attitudes. It is run by unconscious attitudes. Human beings have billions of attitudes towards billions of objects. Now, whatever the attitudes of another person is, should be of no concern to you. You're not here on earth to worry over what other people think. You're not here on earth to even be concerned that the world is governed by dark, unconscious beliefs rather than by conscious human beings. You are here on earth to study your own attitudes, because if you study them farther enough, deeply enough, you'll see that they are the cause of all your difficulties. The world out there doesn't do a thing to you. Everything that happens to you that's wrong, that's painful, that's confusing, is caused by the fact that all you have is attitudes, which is what we're going to explore now. You can start your inner investigation by seeing that these viewpoints, attitudes that you have, are divided into 2 camps. Now, think with me as I talk so that you can see how true it is, what we're going to discuss. You see the truth of what we're talking about. That truth will begin to lead you out of yourself, which is the only problem you have. So look at your attitudes and you will see that they are divided into 2 camps. Just look at them, and you can put them over here on the left, over here on the right, in 2 opposing categories. These 2 camps consist essentially of self-praise and self-condemnation, of self-love, of self-hate, of self-praise, anything favorable to you on one side, and on the other side, self-hate, self-degradation, calling yourself names. The mind, therefore, divides itself into 2 sets of attitudes. One in which you praise yourself so-called love yourself, and the other in which you dislike yourself, want nothing to do with yourself. Now, as long as you live with these divided attitudes, as long as you live in this self-division, which is schizophrenia, then you cannot fulfill the purpose of life. Now go real slow on what I said. As long as you live with this set of personal attitudes in which you divide yourself into two kinds of people, you will miss entirely the purpose for which you were put here on earth. And in brief, I will tell you now that that purpose is to rise above division, to rise above both loving yourself and hating yourself all day long, and on each occasion calling yourself this lovable person or this hateful person. So if you can begin to see right now while I'm talking to you that this is how your mass of attitudes works inside you, you've already made some progress in beginning the understanding that will eventually bring you above it. Now here's the mistake. You have these attitudes in which you call yourself this or that. Praising yourself 1 minute for accomplishing something, or someone flatters you and you swallow it and you like what you hear. And on the other side, a minute later, you fall into depression because someone criticizes you and then you criticize yourself. Now, the reason attitudes cannot help you in any way to become the new kind of a person that we've been talking about, the reason they can't help you is because they are not you at all, not either side, not either camp. You make claim 1 minute in your division that you are this pleasant, approachable, kindly, intelligent person on one side. And then, because you don't understand how your mind operates, you unconsciously slip over to the other side in which you hate yourself. And that causes violence, by the way. But in both cases, you make the mistake of calling yourself this person or that person, whichever it happens to be, the side it happens to be on. This can be illustrated by a bookseller. He's in his shop, and the big truck rolls up, and the truck driver gets up and he says, "Here's a load of books that you ordered the other day." The bookseller says, "Ah, good. I'll come out and get them off and look at them." So the bookseller goes out, and he sees the load of books, and he picks one up, and he says, "I like this book." And then he picks up the next one, he says, "I don't like this book." And then he picks up the next one, he says, "This is a good book. I ought to do well with it." He looks at the next one, he says, "This book is worthless." He goes through all his books, judging it a good book or a bad book for him personally. An hour later, the truck driver comes back embarrassed, and he says, "Sorry, but I made a dreadful mistake. These books don't belong to you at all. I thought they did, but they're not your books." See the parallel? The man didn't know that the books didn't belong to him, so he took them out and claimed them for his own, judging them. You're not your attitudes. You're not your beliefs. You're none of the judgments you make about yourself. They don't belong to you, but you claim them, which is the trick of the mind operating right within itself, one thought claiming alliance, connection with another thought. And that's all that's happening is ideas connecting with each other. And you are none of them. You have no identity at all right now. You think you do, and you fight for it, and you wreck yourself for it. This is why you get angry, because you think someone is going to take away one or more of these identities that you've set up for yourself. All right. Now, if the mind cannot cause change because it operates on a very limited level, a very low level, if the intellect cannot change the kind of a person you are, if it can't make you really gentle, really innocent, if it can't do it, then where do you go from there? See, it looks like an impossible situation. It looks utterly confusing because you were told that you must change who you are You must no longer be a suspicious little neurotic criticizing. The only action you know is to hurt someone. You're told that you must not be that anymore, and yet you hear that your mind can't take you above it. Then what are you going to do? This is why people get so discouraged easily, and besides, they want to take themselves on the upward journey, and you know that you can't do that. All right. If divided thinking, praising one minute, criticizing the next, can do nothing for you, and this is all you have, then what are you going to do to cease being afraid? Go real slow now. If thinking about it, if getting all these plans for changing your nature, if nothing works, if you're confined to the prison of your own mind, what are you going to do? I'll tell you what you're doing. You're thinking frantically about what you're going to do. And that's the problem. Besides, you don't want to rise above yourself. You don't want to become authentically innocent and kind. You want to hang on to yourself while calling yourself kind, while calling yourself intelligent and competent. Where do we go from here? I will tell you where we go from here. Where you're going to have to go from here if you're going to experience an authentic new life, a new way of living within yourself, in which you are solemnly powerful, because that's your new nature, not your old nature anymore. I want to give you a key word for tonight. Think of the phrase self-passive. Self-passive. Now, do you know what it means to be passive? Well, you know that it means to not be aggressive. You know it doesn't mean to be assertive, to demand your rights no matter how your face contorts with violence and hatred, to go out and scream for what you want. That's being active, isn't it? That's being violent. That's being neurotic. That's being very evil. Isn't it evil to injure yourself with a hateful attitude? Isn't it? And doesn't that evil that you have in you spread out to other people? Of course it does. So if all we have is evil in us, if this is all we have, then the key to smashing the whole delusion that we can work our way out by ourselves is to be passive, is to sit back and not try to prove anything, not even try to prove that you know the way out. There's no way you can know the way out. What you can do is cease to seek it. Isn't the passive state already one that feels different from the active one? You know what it means to be aggressive, neurotically aggressive out in the world? You know how that feels. We've talked about higher emotions from time to time, and you're on the track of one of them right now, where you can begin to see that this self-passivity, where you sit back quietly and you're not fighting for anything, not fighting against anything, not seeking anything to praise in yourself or anything to condemn. You just sit back and be very quiet and see what results from that. But you can't do that until you've utterly lost confidence in your intellect, which is divided. And when you know absolutely that it can only move back and forth, not upward, you will begin to lose this confidence, which is essential. Isn't it essential to lose confidence in delusion? That's the way to go. You don't try to find truth. How can delusion find truth and all you have is that? How can darkness seek light? That's the last thing that darkness wants to do. How can a divided mind know anything about wholeness? So you can't use this split intellect that you have and say, I'm going to find something higher than it. It can only find itself, which we'll get to a little later. And so you're passive because you know that there's nothing else to do that's authentically intelligent. I will read an exercise in the series called Practical Exercises for Inner Harmony. These exercises are part of the action you can take out in the world, down at the office, in the home with that spouse, in which you can put into practice what you have learned here. And I don't really know why you should have to wait till you get home or go down to the office. Why don't you do it right in this room? But these are action programs in which you can learn from doing rather than from hearing, and you can learn from both ways. Here's an exercise called Signs Along the Spiritual Highway. We forget to remember. Here's the solution. This exercise shows you how to use small signs and notes to remember spiritual facts and actions. Write down on a small slip of paper a short and pointed truth that has special meaning to you. Here are two examples. A, rise above usual thinking. B, never fear my own confusion. Place a note where you will run into it several times during your day. Make it conspicuous to yourself by placing it alongside a mirror, on your desk, in a prominent place in purse or wallet. Each time you see it, ponder its meaning. Try to see how it connects very personally with your life. Here is a peculiar fact. After seeing a sign many times, you will cease to notice it. This is because it passes into the familiar, and we seldom notice the commonplace. So from time to time, you should change both the message and its location. If other people in your life are not truth seekers, you should keep your signs a personal secret as much as possible. That's the end of the exercise. If a man invites you to come up to his gold mine and he says, sit outside the gold mine, and in a few days all the gold that comes out will be yours. Just sit there, and all the gold that comes out you can have. So you go up the gold mine, and you sit there for a day, for 2 days, for 5 days. After a while, when no gold comes out, you understand there's no point in you waiting there expectantly, hopefully, to get gold anymore, right? Common sense tells you that nothing can come out of it. Aren't you beginning to get the common sense suspicion that nothing good can come out of your present ways of thinking? If you understand there's nothing you can do, the only thing that can be done is a full awareness that nothing can be done. Now you get up and walk away from that gold mine knowing that nothing good can come out of it. Only rocks, no gold. Now you've walked away from it. You have cut yourself off from your own self, which you have called a savior, a deliverer. Congratulations. You've begun to lose confidence. You're going to start to shake now, but you're shaking consciously now. Before you shook and you said, the next thought will do it. The next self-hatred will give me a feeling of aliveness. That's what I'll do. I'll hate myself and I'll feel alive. That will give me a sense of eternity. You're calling time eternity. What's the matter with you? You're calling a fire an eternal state, the fire of your own concealed violence, which you have and you know it. Self-passive comes to a person, the self-passive state, comes to the man, comes to the woman who was sat at the opening of that gold mine for days and months and years, waiting for delivery, believing the promises. Don't be afraid to desert the gold mine, which is your own very, very limited intellect. Cease to put any kind of a label on yourself. Cease to call yourself anything. Give it up. Have the courage to not go out and let the mind call you something and then you accept it as being true. There's a story of a boy, a 12-year-old boy who came home from school one day all distressed and just nervous. And he told his parents, when I was out at the playground today, those other kids called me a lot of funny names, bad names. Called me names. And his parents helped him as best they could. They explained that that's the way people are sometimes and that he shouldn't let it bother him. But it did bother him. And later that evening at dinner, 2 or 3 hours later, the boy was sitting at the table with the family, and he was quite silent. And the father, noticing it, he said, you're very talkative tonight. Is something wrong? And the boy, who indeed was in a thoughtful state, he looked at his father and he said, you remember I told you earlier today that those other children at the playground were calling me names? His father said, yes. And the boy said, I've been thinking about that all afternoon long. And it's the strangest thing, Dad. It's the strangest thing, but that's exactly what I have been doing all the time. That boy was pretty wise for his years, wasn't he? He saw that it wasn't the world out there alone that was putting all these so-called harmful and so-called helpful labels on him. He was doing it himself. He understood that. That boy keeps up with that kind of thinking, he's going to achieve the purpose of life. I'm wondering if you really see the enormity of what we're talking about. That just starting out by seeing that you have a mass of attitudes that divide themselves into what you call good and what you call bad in relation to your self-reference. Can't you see that that's the beginning of getting rid of all your problems? There are no exceptions to the difficulties that you will get rid of if you start where you should start and see where you're making the mistake. If you know you're making a mistake in arithmetic or in your business in some way, if you know clearly that you're making a mistake, that mistake stops. Because you're not going to knowingly continue with it. Can you see the mistakes then you're making? Or are they too unconscious? Are they too well hidden from you because you're getting so much fun changing your labels, changing your roles, switching from one fantasy to another, running around playing your roles and your costumes, never seeing that there's no reality in it at all. And you're so nervous about it. Back to the mind a little bit. You study your mind. You start looking at it, examining it. See how it operates during the day, and you will see exactly why, for yourself, why it can't give you anything higher than what you have had up to this point in your life. The mind always must go back to its own level. It seeks its own level. That's all it can ever do. You've got to realize this for yourself so that you're more than willing to give up trying to think your way to a higher state, more than willing to just say to yourself, no gold there. I'm going to walk away from it. I'm going to walk away from it without having another gold mine to go to, without having another promise, another person to come along and help me, or another book or whatever. You go out in the desert here, you take a coyote, and you take a rabbit, and you take a chipmunk, and you take those desert animals and you take them up to a real high mountain somewhere, and you leave them up there. They're going to be very uncomfortable up there, aren't they? And you know what they're going to do, don't you? They're going to go downhill real fast. They want to go back to where they belong. They want to go back to where they feel comfortable in the desert, in the hot desert. That's what their nature is. And they want to go back and feel over and over again what they've felt before. I have described human beings. How the most valuable thing that people have is a familiar environment. It makes no difference how dry it is, how sandy, how miserable it is. Do you understand then that people don't go into these studies as we're doing here? Because there's a certain strange trance in them that keeps them in love with the sandy places, that keeps them eager to remain exactly as they are, because if you can understand this, and it isn't easy, because they feel safe in their lack of safety. I will tell you, there's no safety for any human being in this life who's living in the desert where there's no water of truth. Can't you look around and see use the word nervousness. That describes a lot of things, doesn't it? Can't you see the nervousness of the people that you work with? They have no control of themselves. They have no life of their own. All they have is a set of opposing attitudes. As I said at the start, you never mind them. That's their life. You've been called to this class to start somewhere. To start with knowledge. And when your knowledge reaches a certain point, then this idea of being passive, of sitting back in life, that idea will come to you. You won't have to seek it. It will come to you because you've made space for it. You've made room for it. And it will increasingly grow and grow and grow. And you will see, among other things, you will see a daily lessening of hostility in you. You will see a lessening of fear and trembling. You will see yourself change in a way that cannot be described to you. You understand, all that we talk about is a personal experience. Now, when I talk about a personal experience, I'm talking about you and you. I'm talking about each of you realizing that the work has to be yours. The knowledge can be given to you, and it's being given to you right now. The facts of what you must do can be given to you, and that's where the responsibility of truth stops, to give you the initial facts. Then it asks you to do your part. And your part becomes so simple when you're driving your car somewhere and all of a sudden a great gloom and darkness sweeps over your spirit and you see it. You now know that you've been taken over. And you think a little bit. You say something like this, you know, I heard that in class recently. I heard that the mind divides itself into self-praise and self-blame. And right now, in this particular state where I'm driving my car along the highway, I'm blaming myself for being a financial failure, for being a failure as a husband or as a wife. I'm blaming myself for not being successful like other people are. No matter where I look, I see people who are happier than I am, who seem to have a lot more than I do. You had better catch yourself right while that's going on and remember what you heard here, that you've fallen right into the trap of the side of self-condemnation, of self-hatred. Now, careful. I want you to remember what just happened to you, because when you arrive at your destination, and that you're going to a party, and you go to that party and you're greeted by your name, everybody says, glad to have you here, come over to the snack table. Hey, I hear that you're starting a new business. I hope it works out for you. Watch it, right? Now you're watching the self-praise, the self-affirmation come in. And now you believe in that one. Now tell me, please, which of these two people are you? You're going to understand by entering into the self-passive state that you're not either of them and you never have been. Now a real miracle is happening inside of you. You're beginning to come to the end of depending on the intellect to do something that only consciousness can do, that only truth can do. You're coming to an end of what you should come to an end of, which is your own frantic effort of crying out, of saying, what am I doing here on earth? You don't have to cry out, what am I doing here? You can find out. You can see for yourself what you're doing here. And when you see what you're doing here, you will see that you're on a low level, but that you can go to a high level. It is really as simple as that. If you will leave it simple. The passive state is extremely simple. All you have to do is sit back and let the mad world inside you and outside you do what it wants to do, while you say, I'm going to sit here and watch the operation of the world outside and inside. I'm not going to interfere, because my interference has wrecked everything. I interfere in either loving myself or hating myself. No more of that. I'm going to let something higher than me solve my problems for me. That higher power exists, and it's just waiting for you to make the self-passive state, the dominant state, the overwhelming condition of your life. Let it enter, and it will do it for you. It will show you what you need to know. It will do all the work for you. And it's the only power on earth capable of doing it. I'd like to use the word God, I'd like to use the word reality, use the word truth. Any term will do. But it exists, and it exists to help you. Welcome it. I want to give you a caution about a certain trap which you might fall into. And if you remember what I say, you will not fall into it. There is a certain very insidious trap called growing old. And I want you to know that millions of human beings on earth fall into the trap of playing the role of an old man or an old woman. And almost all people do it, first because of lack of understanding of what I'm telling you now, and secondly because of the love of the certain false advantages they have of playing the role of an old person. I have known many people, and I can think of them right now, who at a certain age started to automatically fall into the role of behaving older because of false benefits they think they got from it. For example, when you grow older, you think, well, I've lived my life, I've been younger, and I've taken responsibilities. Now I can just sit back and let the world take care of me. I've contributed my part to the world. They've contributed their delirium to it. That's a side issue, isn't it? And now I can sit back and join the old folks organizations and play a very safe role where I don't have to be challenged anymore. You never were. You never accepted it during any part of your life. All you were looking for was the quick advantages, thrills, and excitements. You never did accept your responsibility. What are you talking about, letting go of your responsibility now? You never did take it. The main point is, you never permit yourself to grow old in your mind and in your spirit. I'll tell you, it'll keep your body young for one thing, but that's a small part of it. The main thing is, I'll interrupt myself. You see, if you can think of instances of people who are playing the act of an old man or an old woman, therefore you must respect me more. Gray hairs is great wisdom, and all the rest of the nonsense. If you were a nitwit at 20 or a nitwit at 80, is the point clear? The staring herring exercise, for those of you who don't know what a staring herring is, a staring herring is a staring herring. A staring herring is someone who is under the hypnosis of exterior persons, objects, and events. Like in this room, I look out and guess what I see? Creatures from the sea, staring herrings. You're staring like that. Staring herrings are in a very special kind of hypnotic trance in which you, look. They lean forward a little bit, and they barely blink an eye. And if you spoke to them, they'd jump a mile. There is great false peace of mind in being a staring herring, because you have something to do with yourself. You have something to do with yourself out into the exterior world, which means that you don't have to have anything to do with the exterior world, which is driving you even badder than you already are. You have to see that when you're in a hypnotic trance, it has a false pleasure to you. Now, dare to destroy that pleasure by shaking your head and seeing where you are. When you're staring like that, you don't know where you are. You're absent from yourself, aren't you? Can you see that? You don't know where you are. Shake your head. It'll give you a jolt, and you won't want to do it. It's like waking up in the morning. You don't want to wake up. You want to stay asleep. Do it. Do it the hard way. Make yourself deliberately uncomfortable. Break the pleasure. I've told you before there's a certain state which is akin to staring herring, in which you stare at something when you're all alone, like stare down at the ground like that. Catch yourself falling into that and shake your head. Don't let yourself fall into it. There is indeed much more to the staring herring project than you can see on the surface, and in all of them. I could use 1 billion words a week and not be able to explain it to you, because it is unexplainable. It has to be seen, not talked about. Once upon a time, there was a man who was a flop, a failure in life. Wherever he turned, he met frustration and defeat. Out in the business world, everywhere he went. So, like all people who are involved in themselves and in their own failure, he started to seek ways to escape his failure and to become a success. He wasn't quite sure what it meant to be a success, but nevertheless, he wanted to escape his failure. So he looked around for different plans and schemes which would help him to become successful like other people he knew. One day, going through the newspaper, he saw a full-page ad, enormous ad, big headlines. And it said, for $1,000, we will give you the secret of success in this world. Wow, this is what I've been looking for, he said to himself. The secrets of success in this world. And he was very much impressed by the fact that it cost $1,000, because he said, anyone who can charge $1,000 for a secret of success must have something really valuable. They just charged me $5 or $10. I wouldn't believe in it. But the incredible fact that I have to pay $1,000 means automatically that it's valuable. Pretty gullible already, isn't he? So he went down to the bank as fast as he could, got $1,000 out, and sent it off to the company. And every day he watched for the mailman. He'd peer out of the curtains to see if the mailman was going to put something in the box or go by. And if the mailman put something in the box, he'd rush out and be disappointed. Most of the time, just another bill or something. Finally came the package, very fancy. Even had a seal on the outside. Your seal of success. Unseal this and we will give you success. Opened the package, and had dozens of different kind of papers in it. But the main one, which could have been boiled down to one little sentence, told him the secret of success according to the inventors. And here's what it was. All you have to do is change your middle name. All you do have to change your middle name into what you want to be, and by repeating your new middle name, it will become a reality to you. You can see why he was so glad. With $1,000, it's worth it. I don't have to do anything but change my middle name. I don't have to face anything. I don't have to do any work. All I have to do is adopt the label that I want to become a reality, and I'll become whatever the label says. So he changed his middle name to Robert Financial Fortune Smith. That's how he signed his name. Robert. I mean, everybody thought he was a nitwit, but that's what he did. He said, I'm going to go ahead with it anyway, because $1,000 must be worth something. So he went around repeating his middle name to himself thinking in some magical way that it would attract fortune to him. It didn't. As a matter of fact, he lost his $1,000. But you get the opposite, see. But he said, well, I'll try it again. Maybe success, financial world isn't for me, so I'll try some other area. Now, this man was very shy toward women. He liked ladies. He looked after them. He even lusted after them. But he was shy and scared of them. Any woman could scare the life out of him, just like you men are, because you don't understand women, because you don't understand yourself, and you're trying to trick them to get something from you. Right? I've described, I know you men. So, well, I'll try it. Robert, Great Ladies Man Smith. The lady still laughed at him, so that flopped. So he said, well, I've been making a great mistake out in this world. The secret of success is to have peace of mind. That's it, not to get things. And he went around telling other people that, yeah, money doesn't mean anything, women don't mean anything. Peace of mind, brethren, is all that counts. And he was miserable going around saying that because he didn't have peace of mind at all himself. Years went on. His money was long gone, and long ago he had set the book aside. He didn't want to throw it out just in case. Right? He set it aside and get all dusty. But he felt guilty about throwing away $1,000. He knew it was worthless. Well, he set it aside. He said, well, maybe someday, hopefully, you know. Finally, after a long time, he ran into truthful ideas, truthful principles. And he began to grow up inwardly a little bit. His mind began to work in a more mature way. And he got away from all these old fanciful ideas about becoming wealthy and successful out in the world. And as he began to think about this new philosophy, or true philosophy, he said to himself, I need something to remind me of my aim, of my new goal of growing up even more, of finding something other than this madness that the world offers and that I fall for all the time. I need something to help me remember. And then he remembered the $1,000 he had spent some years before. And he said to himself, okay, I think maybe in the right way I can use the power of memory, of written sentences. I'm going to use that to help me remember my new goal in life. And he said, okay, just for the fun of it, and as a little reminder, not to deceive myself or anything, or not to give myself an identity, he said, I'm going to give myself a new middle name. And he gave himself a marvelous middle name, which I recommend that all of you do also, likewise. He called himself Robert, regardless of the consequences, Smith. Regardless of the consequences, I'm going to grow up. I don't care what it costs me. And he went on for years this way, just as a reminder, you know. And it helped him a good deal because he began to understand how timid he was, how afraid he was of other people, how afraid he was of losing things that had been valuable to him before. After several years of using this as a reminder that I'm going to go ahead in the spiritual adventure regardless of the consequences to myself, all of a sudden he thought of it and he broke out in laughter. He couldn't contain himself at a new revelation that came to him. And here's an illustration of the revelation. I'm talking to you now. Picture a man out on a life raft, or a raft out in the ocean, stranded out there for 10 or 12 days. Hungry, thirsty, lost, lonely, terrified that he's going to be out there forever. A boat comes along. And the boat comes along and the captain says, sir, you're saved, you're rescued. Pull yourself alongside the boat and we'll haul you aboard and you'll be saved. And the man on the raft says, but I'm afraid to come aboard because of the consequences. Careful now, follow this. This is the whole point of the morning talk. I'm afraid to come on board because of the consequences. When you see this, you will laugh too. The consequences of leaving your raft and getting on the boat, the consequences are that you'll lose your misery. You'll lose your lostness. You'll lose your loneliness. You'll lose all your fears and terrors and your bitternesses. You'll lose them. Are you following? The consequences. See, look, we're afraid to lose our worry. We call our worry valuable. On the raft, we call it valuable. The man gets on the boat. He says, but if I get on the boat off the raft, what am I going to worry about? See what he values? Now look at the situation we're in, therefore. We're in the situation in which we are so deluded, utterly deluded, that we think we have something valuable. And finally, the time will come when you will go beyond the right preliminary exercise of going ahead in spite of all consequences. You'll go so far beyond that, you'll break out laughing at your childishness. Because you thought you had something valuable to lose. You have nothing. All right, you tell me, you listening to this talk, I want you to tell me what you have of value. You'll never be able to answer me. If you answer me, it will be a falsehood. It will be your own imagination talking. You talk about your intelligence. What intelligence? In the first place, did you create your own mind? Are you the creator of this great intelligence you think you possess? And you have powers of leadership. If they just elect you the president or the king, you could solve all the world problems. I don't understand. Do you have a private factory where you originate and manufacture all your great ideas about how to run the world and how to run your own life? Where did they come from? They didn't come from you. If you want to know where they came from, the question was asked where the thoughts come from. Everything comes from the great creative process, from God, if you want to simplify it as that. All you can do is dare the consequences of losing yourself until you see the utter idiocy of the statement itself. I told you now, it's right at the beginning, because this is the only thing you can understand. But at a much higher state, you'll see how ridiculous the whole thing was. Don't you kind of sense that you have nothing valuable of your own? But you're afraid, if I lose my worry, what will I do with myself all day long? You know that. I've told you, and I will repeat to you. You can drop your worry at this very instant if you let insight, understanding come in and take it away from you. Why don't you do it? Because you're deluded. You want to call yourself something. You got all these experiences from the past in which you did stupid things. Stupid things happened with your unconscious consent. Stupid things happened, and you worry over them, over the effect they're going to have on your future. You can cancel a future if you cancel the past. And you can cancel both future and past if you cancel yourself. And canceling yourself merely means to see that you're not any ideas you have about yourself at all. Now you are free right now in this very instant. So the question comes, will you investigate very thoroughly and very deeply the idea that you have something of value? Now you tell me what it is, and you watch how you deceive yourself if you give an answer. Your cheerful spirit, even that is phony. You don't have any good cheer. How can a person who's sour and dark inside have good cheer? You go around smiling and beaming at people. Why don't you start to be real? And your present reality is to be lost. I don't say you go around deliberately putting on a sour expression or things like that, because that's an act too. I'm talking about internal work, where you're looking inside of yourself every instant and seeing what is there, and then no longer taking it as valuable. I should tell you that a load of trash has no value at all. Is this a bit strong for you, the next statement? Well, then you work with it. You dare the consequences of understanding this statement. All we have is trash. Trash calling itself gold, calling itself jewels, trash calling itself intelligence. How few ever who come into this world see the facts of what I just said.
whole world in its madness can be explained, can be seen so clearly if you see it in yourself. Imagination is a false and evil magician who can make you see things that doesn't exist at all. Will you take the 2 steps of saying, regardless of the consequences, I'm going to proceed? Now, it's right on that stage, because you don't quite see yet that you have nothing to lose at all. You think you're going to lose your precious name, your precious reputation. All you nice, respectable people, I know all about your private thoughts. You have no respectability in the eyes of truth itself. There's someone who can see through you. Do you know that you're seen through here? All of you. You come up to me, tell me what a marvelous talk it is and how much you want it, and then you disappear. Stop wasting my time. I don't even want to talk to you. I see you too clearly for that. And I'm not going to let you waste my time or your own energy in lying to me. One thing, and one thing alone counts. One thing only. Don't you try to get out of this. There's no way. You try to get out of it, you go back to your raft and stay there for the rest of your life. One thing counts. Whether you come back to where you can hear the teachings of truth over and over and over and over again till something starts to penetrate. Don't come up and lie to me. Don't go into imagination. The world is a world of phonies, and you are one of them. I know you. I know every one of you. Exactly. Precisely. Isn't that nice? Now that you're seen through, and if you will accept that, as painful as it is, as hard as it is to face the fact that you are a phony right here now, that's nice to know, because that's a reality. And you can work with realities, but you can't work with the delusions that you live in that you don't know you have. Now, let's go over that just a little bit. Something that is unconscious in you is unconscious in you. Look, there it is. Something that you can't see, you can't see. So how can you see what you can't see? I'm telling you that you can't see what you can't see, so you can't see it. We're here to help you to see what you can't see. So that all of a sudden, you clap your hand to your forehead, and you say, that's true. I haven't been nothing all my life but a nitwit. Have you reached that state yet? Huh? Or you're still waiting to discover that you're a nitwit? And you're a bigger nitwit than you possibly imagine. Now, there can be no correction of what is wrong in you as long as you are a self-lover. To be a self-lover means you have no interest at all in living life in any other way but in vibration. Vibration, in this case, would consist of thinking of a plan, a project, an activity, getting all excited about it, having nothing of your own to put in it, not intelligence, not money, not decisions, not time, but you're so excited, and because you're always shoving problems and activities off onto someone else while you want the glory, you go out and form a committee. Or you talk to just 1 or 2 people maybe, and try to get them involved in what you are temporarily excited about. Then, because you're a pure machine, a mechanical machine, the excitement wears off because you found a new one, right? And now, here it is. You had this idea and activity, and you've already got someone else involved. You leave it with them. Now look, never mind what these charlatans do, what these people who want to drag you into their hell and then leave you there. You have got to be alert as to what people are really like. What's their motive in wanting me to come to the party? I'll tell you, it's a self-serving motive in one way or another. Why do you think people throw parties? Because they want some kind of an excitement out of it. But I'm talking to you about being drawn into other people's net, into their web, drawn into it, and sooner or later they will desert you because this is what they've been doing all their life. And raise your hand if this has been your experience in the past. And there are a lot of hands, and all of us could raise our hand, couldn't we? You remember how gullible and and foolish we were when we were younger, and that older person came along and promised a certain thing. There could be anything at all, because we didn't know. We were new in this world. We didn't have instructions yet as to how pouncy and how evil people really are. And we trusted them. Wasn't that a mistake? Now, you may not be, in fact, you are not fully aware of the whole significance of such a simple little exercise as that, because you yourself still want to get little excitements, and you're so grateful to someone who will come along and promise you a party. Could any kind of party, a financial party, for example. How many of you have been drawn into a foolish financial situation because of other people? Think of it. I tell you, you go home, take a piece of paper, and write down all the ways in which, because you were foolish and gullible, people dragged you into endless kinds of false situations. Whether it was financial or a marriage or a sex situation, whatever it was, and you got taken. It is your fault. And I told you last night, there are no excuses for what happens to you, because you preferred falseness, the thrill of the moment, to investigation. This investigation will make you so clear-minded toward people, you can spot them 10 miles off, which is easy to do because they are all alike. The whole world. You don't believe me. You still think. You really believe, you foolish people. You believe that the world is divided into good people and bad people. And which are you, of course. You're one of the good people. See? Here's a bad person call himself a good person. There's your first mistake. And because you think you're good, you would never hurt anyone else. You project that image outward and you say, well, that person wouldn't hurt me. He wants to give me something. He's a friend of mine. You believe in the kindness of people because you falsely believe in your own kindness, which doesn't exist at all. This is not false, wrong suspicion to look out at the world and see them as exactly as they are. This is not paranoid. There is such a thing as paranoia, which is projection of your own state, which I just explained briefly. There is another state which is pure, which is powerful, which will keep you safe, in which you look out at the world and you simply see it as it is. There's no hatred, there's no violence, there's no cringing back, I hope they're not going to hurt me. That's all gone. The very clarity of your mind is what an evil and sick world this is. That very clarity frees you from any pain at all. Now you are safe. And you will start immediately. The next time your telephone rings, you will use this little exercise. When that telephone rings, you will ask yourself while walking to it, I wonder what he wants from me. Why do you think they're phoning you? To give you the good time of day? They want something from you. Or you meet someone out in the marketplace of life. Ask yourself, I wonder what she wants from me. How would you like to save yourself endless grief for the rest of your life? Would you like that? I've just told you what to do. You buy this tape and you listen to it, and it'll tell you what to do over and over until you finally get it for yourself and from yourself. And you'll see quite clearly what I said a minute ago. When you have this deep, deep insight, and you look out in the world, you simply see that it's a zoo-ish world. Zoo, animals. You're not afraid of the animals when you go to the zoo. You understand them. There's no fear there. And you look out in the world in the very same way. It doesn't make a difference how much they growl at you or how they glare at you. You don't project anything into their eyes. Right now you do it, by the way. You ever notice when you look into someone else's eyes and they look kind of odd, or they're staring, or they're suspicious, that you name what they are thinking and then you react in fear to what you assume they are thinking? Why don't you just see that any kind of a weird look is a neurotic look and let it go at that? Say, there must be something wrong with that person. A normal person doesn't glare like that. A normal person doesn't get angry. A really mature human being doesn't look at me with a suspicious little, beady little eyes like that. I'm going to read aloud another in the series of practical exercises for inner harmony, which are designed for you to take your information, act on it, proceed while being afraid if necessary, proceed to act on what you know, and at a certain point you will see that there's something higher than the information that you started with. These are essentially action programs for you to prove to yourself that truth is indeed truth. So I'm going to read one now called True and False Ideas. The exercise is entitled True and False Ideas. The world weeps simply because it does not know the difference between truth and falsehood. The person who learns the difference begins to truly enjoy life. Take a large sheet of paper. Draw a line down its center. At the top of the left column, write true ideas. At the top of the right column, write false ideas. In the correct column, and in a short sentence, write down a number of ideas which you believe to be true and ideas you think are false. Under true ideas, you might write, pretense is self-defeating, and the inner determines the outer. Under false ideas, you might write, excitement is the same thing as happiness, and anger is a useful emotion. Also listen to the beliefs of other people. Add them to the column where you presently think they belong. Over a period of time, write down as many ideas as you wish, even hundreds. Number each sentence. Review your list often. Let your growing insight shine on your ideas. You may switch many ideas from one column to the other column. When seeing both right and wrong clearly, you have won over the world in a special way. That is the end of the exercise entitled True and False Ideas. Let's talk a little bit about the unexpected. You come to an event in life, or you're talking with someone, and something unexpected comes up. Something that you didn't expect to hear, that you don't want to hear, that you don't want to know about. At the moment that the unexpected news or information comes to you, it is extremely important that you know what happens to you at that precise moment. If you're not looking at your reaction to this unexpected news, it will keep you on the mechanical level, and you will therefore go into mechanical negative reactions, such as saying, I didn't want that to happen because it seemed to rob me of a little of my glory. I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want to hear it said because it frightened me. See, these statements have already kept you back in the prison of your own revolving thoughts, which means you have forgotten what it means to be new every moment. Now, in our early stages, we come to endless shocks of the unexpected 100 times a day. And we're losing a great opportunity to cancel time thinking and rise above it to a simple, non-self-centered awareness of what happened at the moment. Remember, the I, the self, always feels itself in danger and loves that feeling. It loves the feeling of being trapped because then it can say, I am trapped, at least I am trapped. You should know that by now. What you have to do when suffering a little bit of a shock, of a humiliation, of hearing someone to say something, for example, that you don't want to hear, what you have to do is simply be awake at the moment of that and see yourself about to slip into a wrong reaction, a bitterness, oh, I wish he hadn't said that, or whatever. See yourself getting ready to descend. If you can catch yourself beginning to descend to thought, to reaction, to wishing it hadn't happened, the very catching of that will stop you from going downhill. And at that moment, you will realize what it means to be new every moment. What it means to be new every moment is simply not to fall down when bad news, unexpected news comes along to you. So you stay awake, watching thought, conditioned thought, self-thought, sour thought. Watch it, ready to take you over at the moment that other person says something. If you're wide awake, it cannot happen. You can see it happening. And when you see the tendency to go downhill, you stop it right now. This means that you remained fresh all throughout the crisis, which finally turns out to be no crisis for you because you stayed uninvolved with what that person said. Now remember this finally. God, reality, is above this world. God is above any negative, sour, bitter, fearful reactions. You have to remember that intellectually, first of all, and then watch for the creeping of I into your intellect and refuse it by staying awake. Then you'll know that no problem that ever happens in this world, regardless of what it is, no matter what unexpected or bad news it is, you will know that it does not apply to you because it does not apply to God. How can the traffic jams down on earth and the roaming animals and the wars and the heartaches, how can that level way down there affect that level way up there? Watch yourself about to descend, which is temptation, by the way. Watch yourself tempted to descend down, catch it, stay where you are up there, and there will be no wrong reaction, and therefore there will be no pain, no embarrassment of any kind. Stay where you should stay, which is in your cosmic home. Now I want to continue and explain one way in which we proceed toward our spiritual home. Go along with me now by picture yourself standing in a rough and rocky ground, and right in front of you, a few yards in front of you, is a tall, thick wall. Here you are, rocky ground, in front of you a tall, thick wall. Beyond that wall is more rocky ground, and then another wall. Beyond that wall, more rough ground, and another wall, and on, till there are perhaps 10 or 12 walls out there. Beyond the last wall is your home, the home that you want to reach. But here you are with all these high and thick walls separating you. So you're standing there wanting to get home, but how are you going to do it? Because these walls are very tall, and you don't have any ropes, you don't have any climbing shoes. There's no way you can grab a hold of the wall and climb up. And you feel utterly helpless and lost as to how you're going to pass over the walls and get home. Now, let me tell you, interrupt myself just a little bit by telling you that this process that I've described briefly so far, and I'll go on with it in a minute, this process I've described has no application at all to non-seekers. This illustration can only be of value to people who want to get back home. Because non-seekers think that they're already home. There's no such thing as walls for them. There's no such thing as working on their own hatreds, for example. See? We at least are at the point where we realize that we've wandered, we're far from home, and here's all these obstacles in front of us to cross over. Which is why non-seekers get angry when you tell them about this, because what you're saying is you have to work, and they don't want to work, do they? All right, back to you standing in front of the first wall. Here's what happens. Here's the process of spiritual advancement toward your home. Your feeling of helplessness, utter helplessness is there. You have no equipment at all. So you look at the wall and you look it up and down, you study it, look at the height of it, and you look at the thickness of it, which you can sense, and you wonder how you're going to get through. As you continue to wonder, though, you continue to look at it very, very closely. And after looking at it very carefully for a while, you know what to do. And here's what you do. And listen to this. Listen to it, please. After a while, not knowing how to get through that wall, but you study it, you just start walking toward it, and you go right through it. And when you get through it, you say, that wall was made of paper after all. It was a paper wall. I thought it was real. I thought it was thick. I thought there was no way through. But you studied it, looked at it, and your eyesight grew sharper, and you could detect the falseness of the wall. You thought it was, at the start, it looks very solid, doesn't it? Don't your old habits, for example, look very solid? But you saw a little something that wasn't quite right, and you realized that it was paper after all. Well, what do you do with a paper wall? You just walk on through it and get to the other side. Now, you've passed through the first one, and you're going to recognize what I'm going to say next if you've made any progress at all. You've gone through the first wall. Now, it definitely does not happen that you have all knowledge of other walls, because then you look at the next one and you believe in its solidity too. You believe that it's tall and hard and thick, and you have to start all over. Now, an example of that would be a man who has been working on himself spiritually for a while, and he sees that money is not the answer. He's running around greedily trying to make a profit here and there and cut corners and do everything he can to make a lot of money. He really does realize that that's not what life is all about. So he passes through that wall, let's say. But now he's come to the second one. And here's a problem of relationships with women, for example. He doesn't see how he's ever going to get along with women properly, how they're going to get along with him and all that. And he doesn't realize that all walls are exactly the same thing, because his mind is in a compartment yet. So now he has to start all over. He understands money isn't everything, but this problem, this looks like a much bigger one than the one before. They're really all the same, but he doesn't know that. So the process goes on the rough ground, passing through one wall, onto the next ground, seeing the wall, studying it, until you finally see that every one of them is made of paper. So here's the three steps on that. You stand in front of the wall, not knowing how to get through, but you study it, which is what we're doing here. You're collecting facts, are you not? You're collecting facts about your habits, about yourself, about words, about ideas. You're collecting information. That information gives you the first clue of what you must do, which is to act upon the information. And so you start walking toward the wall, right? You're going into action with the information you've gathered. The third step is when you go up to the wall and pass right through, which is verification of the information that you've collected. Information, action, verification. This is the three primary steps that you can take to get all the way home. Now I want you to remember one point. A little bit of progress, and you say, you know, I see that it was egotistical and false for me to worry and be concerned of that shameful thing I did years ago. You've crashed through that wall a little bit. Remember that the devil never gives up, and he's going to trick you in every way he can to make you think that the next one is surely where you're going to stop. Don't believe it. You remember these three steps. Collect your facts, study your situation carefully, start walking, and then you'll pass through every wall in life and you'll reach home. In addition to passing out knowledge, facts, information in this class, we give you certain actions, procedures by which you can go beyond mere information, in which you see for yourself that there's something higher than reading, something higher than merely listening to tapes, something higher than merely repeating in your own mind the collection of facts that you now have. These exercises will bring you into a certain kind of a oneness with truth itself, in which you have risen above mere information which anybody can collect, and you go to the point where you have being, B-E-I-N-G, being in addition to knowledge. So I'm going to read one of these exercises in the series of action programs, and this one is called You Are New Every Moment. This exercise is called You Are New Every Moment. Picture in your mind an old haunted house in a windy forest. Now, if workmen do not come along and prop it up with wood and cement, it will finally collapse and be blown away. On the clear land, a new mansion can be built. The haunted house is a man's old and usual and faulty nature. If a man will stop trying to repair his mental haunted house with repetitious thoughts, it will eventually cease to exist. In its place will appear a spiritual mansion, a new nature. Your exercise is to study these ideas and still understanding them completely. For out of that understanding will arise corrective action. Here is what you must see and do. You become inwardly new each moment that you do not repair your imaginary personality, your false self, by allowing wrong and self-centered thoughts to repeat themselves in your mind. The very absence of the old makes room for the new. You can become a new kind of human being in any moment you remember and practice this exercise. Even if you fail 1,000 times, these failures are already in the past, so you can go into new and liberating action right now. This exercise contains the great secret of eternal life. And I'll repeat this last sentence of this exercise. This exercise contains the great secret of eternal life. See if you can find it for yourself. That is the ending of the exercise entitled, You Are New Every Moment.
How dare you come into this room and think that truth is harsh? You don't know what you're doing. You are harsh. When your nature is harsh and cruel and bitter and hard, then it sees everything else like it is. And you're not even at the stage where you can begin to judge between truth and falsehood yet. You don't have the intelligence enough to say, I don't know what's going on in this room. You judge it. You say, I know better. I will ask you, who is thinking those thoughts? Why do you identify with your thoughts? Why do you think that you know more than truth? It's because I'll tell you why. While you're alive here as a human being, it is either you or God. Now, if you want to choose yourself, that's so easy to do. Millions upon millions of people choose themselves instead of reality. They stay huddled up in their little minds, and they put on defensive, hard looks. When you protect your harshness, you are protecting your prison. You're keeping yourself right in the middle of it. Now, let's see how well all of you hearing this can understand what I'm going to say next. You are wrong. You are hard. You are bitter. Truth does not have your nature. You have your nature. So the bitterness that you project out into the world is yours. It has no connection with God. You're not even bitter against God. You don't know who He is. What you are doing is sensing a threat to your present existence. And all this harshness in you, and all this defensiveness, and all this poison that you have inside of you says, don't touch me. Leave me alone. Let me lead my own life. Okay. Truth says, okay, if that's what you want, take it. I'm not going to force anything on you.
I can't force anything on you. I am not going to force you to attend the banquet, to attend the feast, the spiritual banquet. I'm not going to force you to attend it. I am inviting you. Here is the invitation. The invitation where your spiritual hunger will be satisfied. You sit in this room and unknown to yourself, you are condemning what you hear. Don't you know that you have no love in you at all? Don't you know that if love exists, which it does, is not you at all? Therefore, if you do not have love, what do you have? You have hatred, and you have violence, and you have viciousness, and you have bitterness in you. Now I will tell you, I'm so glad to report to you tonight that there is something in this universe other than your present inner condition. Thank heaven for that. Do you want to be left to your own resources, to what you are now? All right, most people do. I'm talking to you in this room and listening to this lecture here right now. You don't have to be left at the mercy of your own present nature. Look at your hard faces. When I see a hard face, I see a terrified man, a horrified human being. I see someone who doesn't know how to handle life at all. I know someone who's going around in this world saying, "Don't hurt me. I've already been hurt bad enough. Don't hurt me." For heaven's sake, what do you think's going on in this room? There is no way your nature, your real nature, can ever be hurt in this room. We are trying to show you what is really hurting you, which is your retention of everything you've been in the past. That's what's hurting you. We're trying to set you free of the one thing that's your enemy, which is yourself. And you don't understand this. I know you don't. If you understood it, I wouldn't see the facial expressions that I watched come into this room. I know you people. I know all of you. I know how lost you are. And I know how you pretend, how you fake it. I'll give you one of my favorite phrases for this class. Who do you think you're kidding? This is where the pretense stops. Aren't you grateful? Aren't you delighted? How did you ever come to this meeting tonight? What a miracle that you came here tonight. And you are not tolerated. Boy, we tolerate you, and this turns into a zoo like every other place. I'll tell you, this is not a zoo, and it never will be, because I'm a wild animal tamer. I know how to deal with you people. If you want to be properly tamed, that is, if you want to be shown where you've gone wrong all your life, and if you want an authentic easing of the ache, then you have come to the right place. Because right in this room, because the teachings of a high place are given out here, because of that, you can begin to change. But I want to say again, one point. No one here is trying to hurt you. You are hurting yourself by your belief that you're going to get hurt. The truth is trying to tell you something, but you've got thick heads. You won't yield, you won't listen. You're afraid you're going to lose something. Of course you are. You're going to lose your nightmares. And you're going to lose your jealousy of other people who have more money than you, who are younger than you, who have more power than you, who have more worldly success than you, who have more sex than you. You're going to lose your agony Isn't that nice? Would you like that? Don't you dare say yes to me. You've been coming here for a long time, many of you. You come in here the same old person. Class after class, week after week. And I see the same defeated faces. I'll know when you start to change. I can catch it. I can catch it out in that parking lot. And I see you get out of your car. You'll even get out of your car in a different way. And the way you come into the room, and whether you look around like that. You know, you're wandering around lost. It's not difficult to tell you that you're lost when you look like it and walk around like it. This class has been set up to heal you. To heal you of everything that needs healing. Now, what is it? What was your big problem today? Feeling that you've been oppressed? A feeling that the world and life is too much for you? Was that it, maybe? Whatever it was today, and you may think about it now, whatever your chief emotional conflict was today, the truth which is in this room can heal it. Do you want the healing, or do you want the pleasure of complaining? Isn't it about time you sat down on a ridge out in that dry, hot, dusty desert? Sat down on a ridge and pondered your condition, pondered your position out there. And isn't it about time that you admit that you have never been able to do anything for yourself? All you had was a hope followed by a depression. That is the story of your life. A hope followed by despair. You sit out on that ridge and you see that there's no point in you trying to think rescue, because you'll just be following your own mind, which is incapable of giving you rescue, as it is proved over the years. You see you can't think your way out, then thinking comes to a stop, and you say, what am I doing out here? Chasing around, believing in those other people. Catch yourself before you go into hallucination. Millions of people live like that, and they'll never hear the helicopter motor. They're incapable of it, because they're hearing their own neurosis, their own psychopathy speaking. You walk back to that airplane. Remember, when you walk back to it, you don't know that there's such a thing as a helicopter. You don't know that it's on its way. You don't know what is there, but you do know that you're doing the right thing to leave the desert and get back where you belong in a right position. When you see, the helicopter isn't going to wander all around the desert out there. Certain things are required of you. You know what they are. Shall I use some of the terms? Certain right humility, right conceding that you have wrecked your life up till now by refusing truth. And you get back under that airplane wing and you just sit there quietly. This is what is known as waiting on God. This is a prayer. Your new psychological spiritual position is a prayer. Just being there. And that prayer will be answered. You'll begin to hear things that you never heard before. You'll begin to hear a wisdom and an intelligence that coming from inside yourself, which is the same thing, of course, as the wisdom that's coming down. It came down from up there. You welcomed it by being where you were. It came down and it came inside you, and you know it's there. You're beginning to see the difference between the light of truth and the darkness of your own self.